Well, The Flash is now in theaters and kind of struggling. So, well, I guess it's time to talk spoilers, Matt. I was telling you before we got started, we're going to have a lot to discuss. We will be very spoiled for choice on how to talk about this movie. But first of all, Matt, thank you so much for joining me to talk some Flash spoilers.
Yeah, dude, I'm so excited to talk about The Flash. I mean, it was a lot to process the first time I've watched it, but then the more I think about it, the more I feel a lot better. But now I'm really excited to go into it.
That's interesting. Well, this is a live stream, and we will be talking about this movie in depth. So, spoiler warning here in here out. We will be talking about pretty much as close to everything as we can get. We'll be talking about reveals, potential deaths, everything in between. But I have a feeling that if you're watching this, you've already seen it by now. But if you have not seen it, I have a spoiler-free video on my channel. Matt has a spoiler-free video on his channel. His link tree is in the description of this video. Go give him a subscribe there. And so, yeah, Matt, before we dive in, though, you've been on the channel before, but maybe just go over real quick who you are and what your channel's all about.
Well, most of my channel, I just talk about movies, putting out my movie reviews. And there's some videos that I will put out for my acting challenge videos, but not as much. But most of the time, I just like put out my non-spoiler review for movies that I've seen recent. And I've been on that. I started the YouTube channel like a few months ago, and I've been wanting to do this for quite a while now. I mean, I just really wasn't ready in how this whole works in the YouTube space. But now I'm feeling getting used to it and putting out more videos than I usually do. So yeah, I've been doing it ever since.
Yeah, like I said, Matt's link tree is in the description. Give him a subscribe there. With YouTube, I'm certainly no expert, but I think I've been doing this kind of off and on for a few years now, and it really is kind of an iron sharpens iron kind of thing. You have to really get into the process. Like, you could read about it as much as you want, but unless you're actually in the act of doing it, there's a lot of stuff that you just pick up the more you do it, if that makes any sense at all.
Oh yeah, I'm totally with you. That's exactly what I'm doing. I'm learning as I go along because I was just more used to doing mostly written reviews on Letterboxd. Then I did video reviews, short ones on TikTok, which I had a lot more like numbers and all that stuff, and I was very used to the whole groove. But then I wanted to branch out and start something like fresh, like start my own YouTube channel and just going more into that. And yeah, at first, like, yeah, it was just a little bit hard to get into the groove, but then the more I do it, the better it gets. I'm still, like I said, I'm still learning as I go along.
Yeah, absolutely. And the more you do it, the better you will get. But yeah, like I said, Matt's link's in the description. He has a very entertaining YouTube channel. He's got a great TikTok and an Instagram. Definitely recommend checking out all of those. But like I said, this is a spoiler-filled stream. We'll be talking about it in depth. If you're in the live chat watching, hit us up in the live chat. Let's make this a party, shall we? But I think, Matt, unless you want to get straight into the plot in the movie and what happens, I think it's important maybe we talk about the fact that this movie's kind of struggling in box office wise. And I looked it up beforehand. According to a website called The Numbers, the worldwide box office as of now, and I'm just pulling this number up today, so this obviously could change,
Mhm.
but it's sitting at just over or just under $140 million. And if my memory serves, the budget for this was just over 200 million. Again, I could be completely off on that, but I have a feeling that I am in the ballpark. Now, in a normal movie, that's like, oh, well, that sounds great. But when you're talking about a movie like The Flash that had a massive budget and all these things going for it and things against it, I don't know how I feel. Like, if I'm someone at WBD, I'm not entirely sure how I feel about that, Matt. What do you think?
Yeah, I was a little bit surprised that this movie's not making as much money as it should have, and it made in the opening weekend, it made a lot less than Black Adam, which, oh yeah, because we all know what happened to Black Adam. It made like it couldn't even make 400 million worldwide, and it was just struggling with the mixed response, and especially the people who are ready to give up in this DCEU world, because there's a lot of bad baggage, and especially with the drama going on with WB and the whole change, and James Gunn taking over and now rebooting the whole thing. People were just saying like, yeah, they're just probably saying we're going to ready to check out of this movie. And I was just hoping that more people would go out to see it, because I myself really did enjoy the movie a lot more than most people. I understand it's getting a lot of divisive reviews, and some people on Twitter are just encouraging a lot of people to not want to go out and support it, because we already know about the controversy going on with Ezra Miller, which, yeah, I understand that's a fair point. But for me, I'm more about like, hey, separate from the artist to the art and just judge the movie for what it is, and judging the performances, and not just rave about Ezra Miller as a person. Because when they were shooting the Flash movie, they shot it like, I believe it was like in 2020 and 2021, before this whole incident started to take place. And here's the thing, they couldn't just reshoot the whole movie, because they already spent so much money on that budget. There was no way that they were going to make that work, and they couldn't recast them, so they had to like work with what they've got. And so, like I said, I still enjoy the film. I know a lot of people, some people were a little struggling of how they feel about the film, but I feel like that the more I think about this film, I feel like the better it gets. I understand that the visual effects, the CGI were one of the things that stuck out like a sore thumb, and I get it, and that's fair. But for me, it didn't affect with the story and the characters that I thought it really delivered, especially with Ezra Miller playing two different characters in the same movie, in the same scene together, which I thought it was so well done, in my opinion. I love how they were able to play two different people in two different realities. And I thought Michael Keaton's Batman is easily the standout, because people wanted to go to see this movie to see Michael Keaton's Batman, because they know him from the Tim Burton's Batman movie. And and seeing him coming back on the big screen was just crazy, because of the multiverse timeline aspect. And I thought that Sasha Calle's Supergirl was so good, even though that she wasn't really utilized enough. But I think that that was on purpose, because you got to remember, when before this whole regime change, they had bigger plans for her setup in the future DCU movies, because those two alternate endings that then she was in the ending of the film, especially the first one, they were setting it up that she was going to be in the future of the DC projects. But now that thing's been shut down, and that's not going to happen anytime soon. But I still really enjoyed the film for what it was, and I really want to see this again, and see if my opinion still remains the same.
Well, we have Jacob Collins from 3D Movie Cinema in the live chat. Hello, Jacob. Also, give a shout out to him. He created the thumbnail for this video, so thank you so much for that. Hey guys, the problem isn't superhero fatigue. It's mediocre or bad superhero fatigue. If The Dark Knight, Spider-Man 2, and Logan were the type of movies coming out, fatigue would never even be mentioned. Yeah, there's a lot of truth said there. And yeah, I think the best thing that even before Ezra Miller was revealed to be the CEO of Prick Incorporated, even before all of that, this movie was a mess. I remember when I was watching Collider Movie Talk religiously, every other week it would be Flash director leaves, Flash director brought on, new writing team in, new writing team leaves. It's just like someone needs to make like a disaster artist style film about the making of this film, because there is plenty of material to go off of. Like David Fincher needs to direct that Social Network style. But let's I'd like to see it.
I do see, yeah, I do agree, because I remember 10 years ago when they announced that they were going to do a solo Flash movie, and Ezra Miller was the front runner to, like, he's now cast to play the Flash. And yeah, it's been a rocky the past 10 years to try to get this movie made, because one, they were still don't know what they wanted to do in this DC universe, because one, they didn't have like a leader like Kevin Feige to really like structure this whole new universe like Kevin Feige did in the MCU, and they were just playing catch up. They overextend themselves, and they were not very cautious of what they had to put out in this DC movie, which I'm so glad that James Gunn is the guy in charge and trying to do this whole reboot and give us a proper structure and make sure it's more consistent and not feeling like disjointed and disconnected. Because if you watch like Michael Rosenbaum's podcast episode with James Gunn, he even said that we are going to be very cautious of the product that we put out. And he's really acknowledged about the superhero fatigue. He's seen that people have gotten lazy with their superhero movies. Like all they did was not really just recycle things that has been done before and not really give us an emotional character arc to the story and making us care. And this is not what James Gunn does. James Gunn wants to do all that. He wants to make movies that it just storytelling that matters in character development. And that's what James Gunn really wants to do. And it just shows you how passionate fan he is, and he's all about collaboration. And then, yeah, going back to what 3D movie cinema says, that the problem is not superhero fatigue. It doesn't matter how many superhero movies you put out. It's just we just have been having a lot of mediocre superhero movies in recent years, and we hardly get movies that are bangers. Just like before Phase 4, we've been getting a lot of great banger MCU movies. They've been hitting it out of the park. Phase 4 was a big of a hit and miss, more than the other phases. We only got like a few banger movies like Spider-Man No Way Home, Shang-Chi, and Guardians Volume 3. Yeah, so they just really need to get their acts together and what they want to do in this MCU, especially with DC, which I completely trust James Gunn and his vision, because once we see the trailer for Superman Legacy, I think it will still establish what this new DCU chapter is going to be.
Yeah, and let's table the James Gunn aspect for right now. I want to save that for later on in the stream, but Jacob commented some more things. Also, when Guardians 3 and Across the Spider-Verse came out, no one mentioned fatigue, but Flash comes out, it's fatigue. And then slasher movies in the 90s, strongly, it was all the same until Scream came along, and then they went away because no one watched them. Now they're back because better stories and not rushing them. That's a good point, too. And yeah, you were like I said, James Gunn, I think we can save that for a little later on. But yeah, I wanted the DCEU to succeed for just the longest time. Like I love Man of Steel. I recognize why people don't like it. I love that movie. I love it to pieces. And I can understand why people wouldn't like it. However, it's just from Man of Steel onward, I think something happened where it was like the polarizing response was like, I think they were rattled, and so they just went straight to Batman v Superman instead of just building it up, which, I mean, we could like rebook the DCEU all the live long day. That would be a fun stream to do, Matt, if you're on board for that, because I have some ideas.
Oh, 100%. Oh, dude, we would go on forever talking about what went wrong in this DC universe. Here's some of the movies that they got right and some things they got wrong. We can go on forever about that. That could be like a different topic in another video.
Yeah, but literally, DCEU is up, down, up, down, up, down, and then just no consistency whatsoever. And I think even before The Flash came out, like I said, it was just depressing because like people leave, people go, or people leave and they come back. It made no sense. Like legit, the Game Night guys, Francis Daly, and I can't think of the other guy. I'm sure you know the one I'm talking about. Like they made Game Night and they just did the most recent Dungeons and Dragons movie.
Oh yeah, those two directors, yeah, they were the front runners to direct The Flash, and they left for creative differences. Rick Famuyiwa, who directed Dope and directed a lot of the episodes of The Mandalorian, he was supposed to direct the movie, and it was not going to. The storylines that they were approaching for this in the making of the Flash movie, when directors came and went, it wasn't going to involve like a Flashpoint multiverse timeline that they were setting up, that Andy Muschietti directed. They were just going to go for the more of the rogues gallery with Captain Boomerang and Captain Cold and I believe Reverse Flash, and I believe that they were supposed, and Ray Fisher's Cyborg was supposed to be a co-star with Ezra Miller in the movie as well. So that thing went, then that thing got shelved.
Yeah, so I guess we can put a bow on this particular conversation by saying it's a mess, and it was just high time. Like James Gunn is pretty much just walking into the room, seeing everything just flooded out, like the sorcerer and the sorcerer's apprentice from Fantasia, just like yelling "stop" and just like sending the brooms over there, the buckets over there, and sending off Mickey to go do his usual chores. So I think that's what might happen, because I do have a certain amount of trust in James Gunn. Directed all of the Guardians of the Galaxy movies, all of them were great. But outside of that, he's directed The Suicide Squad, which is just, I mean, that movie's excellent. But again, we can talk about that all the live long day. But I think now's a good time as any to get into the meat of the matter, the Flash movie itself. And I think I think we might as well just like get out and say like what Ezra Miller did outside of this movie was just not super great. And like you brought up earlier with the whole separating the art from the artist thing, I can enjoy a Mel Gibson movie just fine. Hacksaw Ridge, I think, is an excellent movie that he directed. So, I mean, I can certainly enjoy that. I started watching Lethal Weapon for the first time, but I had to go and do something family related, so I couldn't finish it. But I will finish it. I have enjoyed it. But basically, what I'm trying to get at is that these are human beings. They make very human mistakes. But if they're very talented, then I think I can kind of say, all right, they can at least, like, when they get in front of cameras, they're actually solid. I remember when I was doing the June 2023 preview for Life in the Movies with my podcast partner Jacob Martin. I have someone named Jason, the Old Millennial, who comments on a lot of my videos. All around solid guy. He's not going to see the movie because of the Ezra Miller situation. I totally understand where he's coming from, and he wants the movie to fail because of it. Again, I can respect his argument and I can see where he's coming from, but at the same time, movies are not just one person. Movies are tons of people. There's a lot of money and resources and logistics put into just one singular movie, no matter if the budget's like $10 million or $100 million. So I didn't want the movie to fail because of just Ezra Miller being a D-bag. I wanted the movie to succeed for Michael Keaton, for Sasha Sher, for all the cast, all the crew. I wanted it to work, if for nothing else, for them. So I can see why there's a kernel of, okay, I can see where you're coming from, but at the same time, it's like rooting for a movie to fail. I just never understood that argument. Fully understood it, I should say.
Yeah, I never really understood it either. I mean, I know it's a little bit hard to get used to now, hearing all the things that are going on in drama. The reality is the studios cannot control everything that the actors do in their lives. They're going to make mistakes. Some of them are done worse than others. But you know what? It is what it is. Sometimes you can't control what they do. They're human beings. We can't always control everything they do in their lives, especially with what happened with Jonathan Majors. I mean, look what's happening to him. I mean, and then the actor who played the main villain in Wakanda Forever. Now that's getting more problems. Like, wow. I mean, it's becoming more problem than usual.
Yeah. And going back a little further into the history books, you look at something like, say, Rosemary's Baby, for example. I mean, that movie's directed by Roman Polanski. We all know what happened there. I think the movie's just okay, and it has nothing to do with the Roman Polanski factor. I think it's a well-directed movie. I just think in a lot of ways it's dated. Like, if it feels very much like all show and no go, but that's just my opinion personally.
I'll level with you. I have not seen Rosemary's Baby. I have not seen that film, so I know nothing about behind the scenes drama. I have not seen the film. And I might eventually see it because I believe it's supposed to be one of the all-time classic horror movies of Rosemary's Baby, if I'm not mistaken.
I recommend it as like you've actually seen it, so it's like it's one of the classic horror movies of all time. It was like the end of, like, it was in the mid 60s, everything was changing, like new Hollywood was just about to get started. So it's on that ley line of like getting out of like The Blob and It Came from Beyond the Stars and The Beast from 20,000 Fandoms and into, like, say, The Omen and Halloween. It's very much in that gray area, kind of like where Psycho is. Basically, psychological horror was becoming the norm instead of on the fringes. That's the best way that I can put it. But I guess my point is that my thing about Ezra Miller in this movie and the performance here, I actually liked what they did with the Flash that we know from, like, say, Zack Snyder's Justice League, like on the main timeline. My problem exists when we get to the Michael Keaton as Batman side of things. I can't remember what Earth they call it, but for simplicity, I'm just going to call it when Michael Keaton is Batman, that universe, where he's got the longer hair and he's got like the headphones. I just did not care for it at all. And I understand what they were trying to do with the whole the older version trying to coach the younger version and say, you cannot do these things. You have to do it this way. So I understand what they were going for. I just was not a fan of the execution. I hope I'm making some sense with that.
I mean, for me personally, I thought it really worked in the story. I mean, I get that some people did not like the younger Barry being all annoying, but this is the character that was like annoying on purpose because this is a kid who has never suffered through tragic loss like the Ezra that we know, who has suffered through loneliness. He suffered through like death and all that stuff, and he's a superhero and he's lonely. He doesn't have a mom now, and his dad is in jail. But the other Barry had not had to go through that. And one of the scenes that really stood out to me was in the Batcave when Barry was lashing out to his younger self, like shut up, like you have no idea how lucky you are to have a mom in your life, and you act like that you take everything for granted. You think you're so cool and funny, but you're not any of those things. And seeing the back and forth just shows you that this is like an 18-year-old kid who just thinks has all the answers and he thinks he knows everything. But you see, when you already know he doesn't. And then when you see Barry, who's in his 30s, who has gone through a lot of experience, who knows everything, and seeing the mentorship between the two of them just was so incredibly well done. And I love how they were able to do an origin story of the Flash without being an origin story, if that makes any sense. Seeing the scene when he's trying to recreate the accident that made him into the Flash, because right now he lost the Speed Force because he was punched out by the Dark Flash in the Chrono Ball in the Speed Force, and now he lost it. He still has a speed, but he can't tap into it. He thought that maybe that he can still follow through the course of his of how he became the Flash with this younger version is to recreate the accident. And when that lightning hit, he lost his powers and he got it instead. And seeing him learning how to use his powers for the first time, that's like more realistic reaction. Because if you really think about it, if you were able to possess that power of the speed of light, you would be high as a kite. You would go nuts with it without even thinking twice about it. And we see, and there's another scene that really stood out to me was the flashback in the original timeline during the Man of Steel. Now we know that there's another DC character that was there during the events of the World Engine in Metropolis, where now Barry is learning how to use his powers. He doesn't completely know how to use them. This is like his first day on the job, and seeing him save a kid's life and couldn't save his father being fallen into the debris was crazy. I thought it worked so well. And it's another throwback to the events of Batman v Superman in the opening, where Bruce Wayne was in Metropolis as well when he wasn't Batman. It was just a great parallel, and it made Man of Steel even better.
Yeah, I wish that whole sequence where the World Engine happens was in a much better movie, because that was like, when that was happening, I was like, if this were a better movie, this would be like one of the highlights right here. And it is a highlight, but it's a highlight with very few highlights. But Jacob's back. We can separate the art from the artist. We just had the whole I think he meant to say Hogwarts Legacy controversy. I say we can separate art from the artist, just like Jeepers Creepers, made by I don't think I can say that here, but I love that movie. And then last one from me, guys, but loved Michael Keaton, Sasha Calle, and the dog scene. Hated dumb Barry and the plot hole about tomato soup. Also, Bad Nipples Forever, Clooney back. Well, we'll talk about that in just a little bit. But yeah, like I said, if it were in a better movie, I would love that scene even more than I did. But it was like a rare highlight. There are glimpses, and I say in my spoiler-free review, there are glimpses of like something excellent here. It's muddled in just severely awkward humor. Like, this is one that particularly ages like milk in the Florida sun. After they get the virus from falling into the river, Wonder Woman shows up. Wonder Woman's in the movie for one scene, and she's got the lasso of truth around Batman, and they start, like, confessing various things, and Batman's like, I do this because I miss my parents, and like that whole thing. I'm like, we're back to that old chestnut, huh? Back to like DC League of Super Pets level humor. Okay. And then Barry tries to undo the thing, and he's like, I understand what sex is, I've just never experienced it. I'm like, oh boy, that certainly has a whole different meaning nowadays, huh? But yeah, the humor in this movie is just so painful at times. The whole apartment scene where they're arguing over Eric Stoltz as Marty McFly in the universe, I wanted to walk off the planet. It
Really?
just
I love that scene. I thought the jokes really worked in the apartment, where now he's figuring out that some of the things have changed, especially Eric Stoltz casting for Back to the Future, where it's not Michael J. Fox. That was I thought it was very well sold jokes, even in the apartment. And then they find out that Kevin Bacon is Maverick from the original Top Gun, and Michael J. Fox was the character from Footloose. Like he's really processing every of all altered changes that in the timeline, and feel like that he really screwed it up completely. But the one and there, he created the world where there's no superheroes, there's no meta humans to protect the world. But the one superhero they know is Batman. That's the only superhero in that world that they know they exist. But that's a fair point that you weren't very satisfied with the jokes, but I thought the jokes really worked. I mean, and I will agree that the lasso scene was a little bit jarring, because it kind of reminded me back in that Justice League cut of what with Aquaman and the lasso truth joke. I didn't like that. I mean, I can totally agree that we could have done without it.
it's the Justice League cut. No one liked anything about that movie, but anyway,
but thankfully that the Snyder cut is canon, because they acknowledged it twice in the movie.
Yeah, that's for sure. But yeah, that whole scene, it just bugged me. Like how they realized how to find Batman is from a girl burping. He's like, I'm Batman. I'm like, really? Like, I don't understand. Like, could you do something with a little more finesse other than what they decided to do there?
I mean, these are just stoner roommates from college that they're very stupid. They're young and dumb, and they do dumb things. They're just a bunch of roommates who are stoners who are coming from college from Barry's school.
Okay, yeah, I understand.
No, I understand you didn't like the execution, and that's a fair point. I mean, for me, I thought it really worked. That's just me.
The dude playing like the background music in the background just reminded me of like when you have like 30 tabs open on your computer and you don't know where the music is coming from, so you have to close them all until the music finally goes away. Or just sitting there like, shut it off, someone, please. And just so I'm not trying to be hard-hearted or anything. My favorite part of that sequence is when we get Tamara Morrison as Arthur Curry.
Oh,
and
yeah.
That whole phone call where it's like, your wife is the queen of Atlantis, and they turn to this woman on the couch.
It's an old fat woman on the couch. It's like, is that his? Like, who is that? Is that actually his woman, or is that his mom or something? Who is that woman? Like, it doesn't seem like his type. Like, that felt a little bit weird to me.
I don't know, but it made me laugh. I'm not going to lie. That was like the part in the movie where I was like, all right. That got me. That was actually quite good. But yeah, it was just like, I'm glad you liked it, but I just was like, let's just move on. Come on. I was just like,
You're probably like Batman, like, oh, come on, let's move on. I'm tired of the jokes. Come on.
We'll just end it. Come on. But yeah, it wasn't fun. But
it was a cool Easter egg that Eric Stoltz is now in that timeline where he is Marty McFly from Back to the Future, because most of you who don't know that they shot portions of the film for the first movie before Michael J. Fox took over and had to reshoot the entire film, because they only shot like portions when Eric Stoltz was in the film at the time. So yeah, it was a really good of Easter egg and callback. And the Back to the Future joke, it kind of fits so well into the story, especially with the whole time travel aspect.
Yeah, I'm sure you would know more about this than I would, Matt, but I think it was because Michael J. Fox was initially offered the role, but he couldn't do it because he was on a sitcom as like Different Strokes. No, that's not it. This is gonna bug me. I'm gonna look it up. It was a very famous one, and from what I understand, like TV contracts back in the 80s were hardcore. Like you couldn't get out of it. So he couldn't do it initially, but then he was freed up, and then he eventually ended up doing it. So let's see, Family Ties.
That was Family Ties, because if you watch that documentary of Michael J. Fox on Apple TV Plus, he was shooting between these sitcom shows and he barely got any hours of sleep when he was shooting with Back to the Future, then Family Ties. It was a crazy schedule. Now you see why like Marty McFly always running around and doing all this crazy stunts, because he's so in a hurry to get the shot done and then go back into another set and shoot Family Ties. I mean, that was a great story that he told.
Yeah, he was basically on the Orson Welles school of thought, like shoot, like do Shakespeare during the day and at night do War of the Worlds, the radio play. It's a great little story. Basically, Orson Welles had to commission an ambulance with a mattress in the back between gigs where he could sleep, and he didn't get much sleep during that. But not gonna lie, as awkward as that whole scene was, I kind of want to see what a Kevin Bacon Top Gun would have looked like. I'm not going to lie.
I'm curious to see both versions, kind of like with Michael J. Fox, that he was in Footloose, apparently, took over Kevin Bacon's role, and then Kevin Bacon took over Tom Cruise's role in Top Gun in the original film as Maverick. I can probably see why that Tom Cruise was satisfied with the Flash movie, because of the reference that was brought up in the movie. Like, if you really think about it, because we remember that he raved about the movie and saying it was great, and then when you watch the scene, them acknowledging the Easter egg with Top Gun, and then the whole joke of Kevin Bacon being Maverick, I'm pretty sure he was satisfied with that joke.
Yeah, that makes too much sense. But now in this universe, that means that we have to see like Tom Cruise in like Hollow Man or something, just to truly like balance everything out.
Yeah, that would be interesting to see him in Hollow Man. How crazy that would have been in that direction. But we all know that Tom Cruise is always picky by picking better projects now and during his time with blockbuster movies.
That is very true. But moving along to the Batman side of things. Now, we will talk about Michael Keaton in a minute, but I want to talk about Ben Affleck in this movie, because I guess this is his last turn, because he's only in a few scenes, but these scenes are absolutely great. Like Ben Affleck, I'm going to say it now, he's my second favorite Batman behind Christian Bale. I know that's going to be sacrilege to some, but that's my story and I'm sticking to it.
I mean, there's no apologizing, because I even got so much shit for saying that Ben Affleck's my favorite Batman when someone on Twitter saying that Michael Keaton is the best Batman, which, here's the thing, who cares? I mean, we know it doesn't, just because we pick our favorite live action superhero characters of the iteration, it doesn't mean that we're going to just discredit other actors who play these other iterations, that they could still be one of our favorites in live action. And I'm still going to stand by it. Ben Affleck is my favorite on-screen Batman. I will always stand by it. And I might put Michael Keaton as my second favorite, probably because of the Flash movie now, and how he was utilized in that film and how they did him justice. That maybe because before the Flash movie, it was probably Robert Pattinson was probably going to be my second favorite Batman at the time. But then after watching the Flash movie, I'm probably going to say that Michael Keaton's probably my second favorite Batman.
Yeah, without a doubt. And really, his involvement in the movie, like I said, it's rather small, but one of my favorite scenes in the movie, it's in the trailer, so you've probably already seen it already if you haven't seen the movie yet. But it's the scene where they're in the alleyway, and he basically says, you can also destroy everything. And there's this whole exchange where Barry Allen's talking about how like wants to bring his mom back and the whole nine. And then Ben Affleck and then he drops the line, I could bring your parents back. And then Ben Affleck's Batman is like, it's the traumas that make us who we are. And I butchered that line, but that really just,
I think what he said specifically, if I remember correctly, what he said, and then I might be wrong, but it's like the scars we have is make us who we are, and we're not meant to fix them. You don't need to be fixed. Don't let your tragedy define you. And I thought that line worked so well, because and he said, take it from an old guy who has made many mistakes in the past. And we know that Barry Allen sees how alone he really is, because his father's in prison, his mom is dead, and he doesn't have like any friends. And he was asking Bruce Wayne, like, do you want to hang out and have a food to get out some drinks or something? And I thought, like, oh, now I even feel bad for Barry even more. Like, he's really depressed. Like, he desperately wants to bring his family back so he can become whole again as a person. But yeah, the great message is that you just because you have to accept the things you cannot change. And I believe that, and I can't remember precisely what the other line said it, but that is like brought up in the Flashpoint Paradox animated film that was done. And I thought that that was like a great message. Sometimes we got to accept it and move forward and live with it, because the things, the tragedy that happened to us makes us who we are now today. And if you try to go back and fix it, that kind of undoes everything, who you are as a person.
I don't want to turn this into a sermon or a religious type of thing, but when that whole exchange was going down, it brought me back to the Serenity Prayer, which says, among other things, God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. And this is by no means a religious movie, though I'm sure my friend Christopher Durbin from Durbania from that channel will probably find a way to turn it into a metaphor. But I don't know, I connected it in that way because it's basically Batman telling Flash, Bruce Wayne telling Barry Allen to, yeah, these things happen, but you should try and be you. Like, you can't change the past, you can only live in today. It's like Master Oogway in Kung Fu Panda. Yesterday is history, tomorrow is a mystery, but today is a gift, which is why it is called the present. So, again, in a much better movie, it would have been excellent, but it's just muddled and muddled again. But it is a real shame that we'll probably never get Ben Affleck in the cowl ever again, because, like you said, Bruce Wayne's a lonely man in this series, because it's well established that there was a Jason Todd, and the Killing Joke, or not the Killing Joke, Death in the Family actually happened. We see the jokes on you, Batman, on the Robin suit. It's never shown, but we see the suit, but the death.
Yeah, it's never shown. It was never explained in the Batman v Superman movie. But later, like around the time that they were hyping the Snyder Cut, we already seen that Zack Snyder talked a lot about the fans and what they were when explaining behind like off screen, that the Joker killed Dick Grayson, and it wasn't Jason Todd. He confirmed that this version was Dick Grayson that got killed. He found out Bruce's identity and killed Dick Grayson, burned his home mansion down, and the reason why he has those metal teeth, because Batman broke his tooth. He like beat the living crap out of him to a pulp. We've seen why he's so off the rails during the time of BVS, and why he decided to change the rules and not going from the original rules that he had in his early days as Batman. He was a broken man who has lost so many loved ones in his life, like the closest thing that he had to a son, and that set him off a lot further in the story, especially the events of Man of Steel, seeing an alien god come to Earth and pretty much almost destroying the whole world, and how the repercussions have caused and the consequences. And I thought that was so well done in Batman's arc in the movie.
Yeah, that would make anyone say, all right, time for me to break my retirement. But yeah, I guess it's a good place as any to now transition into Michael Keaton. He was one of the highlights of the movie by a significant margin. And Michael Keaton's just great in general. Like, I recommend everyone check out a movie called The Founder. It's about the founding of McDonald's. He plays Ray Kroc, who kind of stole McDonald's from the McDonald brothers, but watch the movie and it'll explain how and why that happened. But Michael Keaton's a great actor. Birdman is another choice. But great actor. He's a great choice for Batman. And really, he's involved in this movie a lot more than I thought he would be. And I'm kind of glad for it. When I saw him in the trailer, I was just like, okay, this is nostalgia bait. And it sort of is. And I was worried that he was just going to be way too OP, despite the fact that, let's just say, he's in his early 30s in 1989, and he's like approaching his 70s in this timeline. Again, I'm spitballing that. So, I mean, like, there's only so much that suit can do. But I think they made it work with the limitations of that they presented themselves in. One of my favorite scenes in the movie is after the Russia battle. He's got his cowl off, he's stripped off his suit, and he's like suturing himself. And you see some blood in there, and just like, well, we never saw this with Burton, now did we?
No, we did not. It just shows you that, yeah, he's pretty much been out of practice for a long time. We don't know how long he's been retired as Batman. We know that he had an Alfred. He lost Alfred. He's lonely now. Gotham no longer needs him anymore. But him coming back in the cave now, he's now needed in a time in the world of crisis. I thought it was so well executed in what he was brought into it, because we still don't know much about what he lost in his life. It was never explained about it too much. I wish they would have dived in a little bit more into it. I believe, and I could be wrong about this, but I believe that this Michael Keaton Batman is probably not the version that we know from the Tim Burton's movie. It probably has some similar history in the backstory, but I think that everything in this universe probably still remains similar to the Snyderverse, but it's just more a little bit of a mixture of Snyder and Tim Burton, if that makes any sense. It probably has some similar history, but a little bit different, but not the one that we remember from the movies. But I could be wrong.
It is heavily implied that that the Alfred of the Burton universe, who was played by Michael Gough, great horror actor from the Hammer Studios days, he passed away in 2011, so it was fairly obvious that he is no longer with us. Rest in peace, Michael Gough. But I did the math. Batman Returns came out in 1992.
Yeah.
And Man of Steel it came out in 2013. Let's just, again, it's never established year-wise, but let's just say if it takes place present day.
Oh, no, I not to cut you off or anything, but the timeline that he altered, he's still in the past. So this is in the 2013 timeline during the events of Man of Steel. So this is not the present day Michael Keaton's Batman. This is still like 10 years into the past and back in 2013.
Okay, so I think if I got my math right, and it's probably wrong, but he's been retired as Batman for over 20 years. That's give or take. So it's slightly rusty, and he gets some war wounds in this battle. He doesn't come out unscathed, but what I like about it, when I first saw him, I'm like, all right, he's got long hair, beard. Oh no, they're going to do the Last Jedi Luke Skywalker thing, aren't they? No, they actually don't. He's useful. He more than lends a hand with the Barry Allen side of things, more than lends a hand with Supergirl, which we'll get to her next. But it almost made me wish that they did like an old, like a Dark Knight Returns style with Michael Keaton. I don't think it's going to happen at this point. And I think the animated movie is about as close as we're ever going to get to a true, awesome Dark Knight Returns adaptation. But in a perfect world, if I were running things, I'd greenlight it.
Yeah, I mean, or they can just simply later down the line, if they want to do a live action true adaptation that is labeled like DC Elseworlds, they could go in that direction if they still want to do it. But who knows? It's all about when they want to do it. And if the Elseworld stories like Matt Reeves' as Batman and Todd Phillips' as Joker continues to be success, and if they wanted to establish more Elseworld stories so it would avoid the confusion to the casual movie going audience, because most people don't really pay attention about it too much about the differences of these iterations of the character, especially when you're putting it out at the same time. People are still trying to get used to that whole aspect of the multiverse.
Yeah, it's probably going to take a while at the very least. But I think this is as good a place as any to go into, and I'm currently going to butcher her name, Sasha Calle.
I think it's Kali. I think that's how you pronounce her last name.
She is very good in the movie, so I feel bad for butchering her name. I kind of suck with last names sometimes, but what can you do?
I mean,
she was very good. And
you're not alone.
Very good. And it's very interesting, Matt, because when this happened, I was like, they're not going to do this, are they? And it's heavily implied that in this universe, 2 children left Krypton when it was destroyed. Kal-El and I believe her name is Kara Zor-El, or not.
Yeah, her name is Kara. Her name is Kara Zor-El.
Kara Zor-El, thank you. But Kal-El was intercepted by Zod. So when he said this, I'm like, wait, are they going to do it? And then I was hoping against hope, because Henry Cavill basically, DC got the gold mine, he got the shaft, but that's a whole nother conversation for a whole nother time. But I was like, they're going to bring out the black suit Superman, aren't they? And they're going to as a weapon of Zod or something. But no, they didn't do that. And they said the infant did not survive. It was nice to see Michael Shannon back, because I thought he was a very good Zod. Again, I wish he were in a much better movie than this, but it was nice to see him. I thought the Supergirl aspect, though, as a whole, I did like, but unfortunately, it feels like this feels like a one and done almost, unless I'm missing something.
Oh no, no, I brought it up before that they definitely had plans for her in the future of the DCU before this whole regime change and the whole plans have changed. So yeah, they because in the alternate ending of the first ending, Sasha Calle was supposed to come back when Barry resets the timeline, and then Michael Keaton was supposed to show up too. That was in the set photos too. If you have not seen it, she shows up in the court outside of the court with Barry Allen, and they showed a little bit of a glimpse shot in the trailer that's not in the movie, saying, "Are you ready?" That's it for a split second, and it never is, and not in the final cut because we already know that the third ending with Clooney that they completely altered that one. They were literally setting her up, and they were definitely setting up with Michael Keaton's Batman in the Batgirl movie that got canceled when they were finished production. And Michael Keaton, and I've seen a lot of the leaked set videos and photos of Michael Keaton being as one of the main characters of the movie. So yeah, that's why that you're not going to see much of Sasha Calle's Supergirl in the film as much. And I thought that the between Michael Keaton and Sasha Calle, I thought they did the best they could to serve Barry Allen's story. They didn't want it to pull a whole bait and switch and be one of the center focus of the film. The story is centered around more of Barry, and they're here to help support the character and not the other way around, if that makes any sense. One of the best scenes that I forgot to brought up for the Batman scene in the Russian facility, seeing Batman just going at it with the whole gadgets and the whole hand-to-hand combat was just jaw-dropping. And there was one scene in the movie in the hallway where this one chef did not flinch once when Batman was doing this and trying to scare him away. But who is that guy? He's just a chef. Like who? That's my curious. He didn't even flinch once and didn't even get scared and called in for reinforcements. That was one of the scenes that I just laughed so hard.
I want to know his story.
Exactly. They should just make a whole movie surrounded. And there's another callback to How Much You Weigh. How Much You Weigh. It was a little bit of callback to the 1989 Batman when he was doing that grappling hook with Vicky Vale's character and doing it, and him taking out the measure tape and the elevator, measuring of how much that he can go boost up with all like four of them to go up in that elevator. And I thought that was so well done and crafted.
Yeah, and have a lot of problems with the movie, but I will say the action is pretty well filmed, which is something that I thought was very surprising for me. CGI is completely terrible. I think we can parlay into that. I did not care for it whatsoever. I feel like a lot of it just looked bad. And I guess we can talk about the very end where we see basically the worlds of DC crumbling on each other. We see Jay Garrick as the Flash with the tin hat, which, by the way, shout out to this movie. At the very least, they got the same guy who was Barry Allen's father in the CW show to play Jay Garrick, if my memory serves me right. So good on them.
It kind of feels like it was the character that played Zoom in season 2 who tried to impersonate Jay Garrick's Flash, because it had the same suit that he wore in the first half of season 2, but before we get the real reveal of Jay Garrick in the series. So I mean, the actor kind of denied it that that's the same guy. They probably got John Wesley Shipp to do the de-aging, and it just had a similar suit when he's in the Chrono Ball in the Speed Force.
Yeah, and then we get Christopher Reeve as Superman and Supergirl, which I did not expect to see, but there it is. And then we get Nick Cage's Superman Lives, which that was a very nice callback. It looked awful.
I mean, the CGI is terrible, but I still love the cameo reveal, especially Nick Cage's Superman fighting a giant spider. Because if it weren't for that documentary called "The Death of Superman Lives: What Happened" by John Schnepp, who did that documentary, yes. Rest R.I.P. to him. It's devastating that and I believe it's like the 5th anniversary of his passing. But seeing him doing the documentary and talking about the backstory of what went wrong behind the scenes and why didn't get made, I thought it was great. I mean, I think when Kevin Smith talked about when he was written the script before Tim Burton took over, the studio told him that the difference what they're going to do with Superman is that we're not going to see him in the suit, we're not going to see him fly. And I can't remember what, and then you have to find a giant spider in the third act. That's what was one of the 3 rules when Kevin Smith was writing the script for Superman Lives, and that's what the studio told him.
Yeah, basically, it was a very nice callback. I have many problems with this ending. It just looked awful. It just felt like it felt like Rise of Skywalker to me. Just have a bunch of people who the people will vaguely recognize. They won't know the difference. It just, I don't know. It felt pandering to me. It was nice to honor to a degree. It was nice, especially for Christopher Reeve, because for many generations, shout out to Aaron White, one of my favorite subscribers. He is not watching. He has a family thing. He will probably be watching this later. Shout out to him. That Christopher Reeve is his Superman. He grew up with those movies. So shout out to him. But yeah, it looked terrible. It just felt like it was pandering for the sake of being pandering. I don't want to come across as like a curmudgeon, like, stop making it. No, I'm trying my hardest to keep an open mind, but first of all, when we see like the oldest version of Barry Allen, like in the Zoom-esque suit,
in the Dark Flash suit,
the Dark Flash, as soon as I saw that, I was like, I know the ending of this movie, and I'm not a script writing genius. I'm not like Ryan from Real Spective. I'm not actually making short films. I am not. When I saw that happen, I was like, I can probably bet what's going to happen. And I was pretty much, I don't want to say dead on, but I was close to it. And I don't want to come across as a curmudgeon, but I just was not a fan of this.
I didn't mind it. I didn't mind the reveal of the Dark Flash, that knowing that he's been trying to like change every possible way to save Kara and save Batman, and knowing that he's failed so many times over and over again, that he absorbed a lot of the Kryptonian like sharp objects that was absorbing him, and it just went into full madness. And it really just shows a metaphor that the main villain was Barry himself, and he's learning the lessons of, hey, no matter what we do, we can't fix it. We got to learn to accept it. And that was one of the best aspect of the metaphor to the movie, in my opinion. And I understand that sometimes that the villain was a little bit rushed. I get that. That's a fair point. For me, I wasn't bothered by it. I thought it really worked so well in the story.
Yeah, I think the theme of my general thoughts on this movie is just frustrating, because there are like kernels of excellence in here, and just general feelings of, all right, you got something going here, but just because of what we know about directors coming and going and writing teams coming and going, it's just, you can see just like bits and pieces of like structure from every team, and it feels like a different Clue mystery every other scene. Is like Colonel Mustard killed Professor Plum in the library with the wrench, and then the next scene it's like Mr. Green killed Colonel Mustard in the kitchen with a knife. It felt very confused, and I just wanted one Clue mystery, and I just wanted that. But instead, it just kept like switching and flip-flopping around. I guess that's my general, like, putting it all into one sentence. This movie's frustrating because it felt like it was like 3 or 4 different movies just Frankensteined into one.
I mean, that's fair. I mean, I didn't really feel that way by watching it. That's just me.
No, I completely understand. And like I said, I'm not trying to come across as like, I guess what I'm trying to say is I can see where the movie was going. I just wished it were going in those directions. And I didn't feel like it made it all the way there. It started on the way there. It was almost there, but it was like, it got distracted. It was like a laser pointer in a cat. It's like, get the laser. It just didn't work. But, anyway, I think we have, I feel like I'm missing something big when it comes to like talking about movies like this. I feel like I'm always missing something. I guess we could talk about the big reveal at the end. I felt like a pretty offensive gag gift to me, but I guess we can talk about George Clooney. Like, what were we doing with this? Like, the worst Batman ever. It's like, he's apparently the Batman now in the DCU.
I don't think it is.
Someone needs to make this make sense to me.
I think that it makes sense because one, they're done with Ezra Miller, and this is supposed to be made as a closing chapter to the DCEU. Now he's stuck in the Clooney universe, but this is not like the Joel Schumacher's Batman universe that you know from Batman and Robin or Batman Forever. This is just like everything remains the same in the timeline, but the one thing that he was changed and altered was just a different person being Batman that happened to be George Clooney. And I brought it up in the alternate ending before. The second ending that they did, that they brought in Henry Cavill, they brought in Gal Gadot's Wonder Woman, they brought up Michael Keaton's Batman and Sasha Calle's Supergirl. The second ending, when they were changing different directions, they were setting up for the bigger future DC projects like Crisis on Infinite Earths. I mean, I don't know if that's true or not, but like these are just like insider source that I've been hearing recently. So then that got scrapped because originally Henry Cavill was supposed to come back to play Superman, and like just like we saw in the post-credit scene in Black Adam. But then that when James Gunn took over, that completely changed, and we're resetting the whole thing. So we can't like reshoot the whole ending with the movie again, because if they brought back Cavill and they brought back Gal Gadot and all that stuff, then it just sets up like false hope for the future of DC projects because they know that they're moving on from them. So putting in Clooney makes sense, like marketing wise. So yeah, I was a little confused when I first saw that scene, and that just came to my mind. But if you look back earlier before this movie's released, James Gunn even said that the first introduction to Batman was The Brave and the Bold, and he was probably going to be playing the character who is in his 40s and is a few years older than Superman. So that clarifies that that we're not going to have George Clooney in this DCU. That like the one that they were seeing, that's just a way to end the story with Barry, Ezra's Flash, that it's just a tie in the knot and they're moving on. That's just how I interpret it.
Well, it was very poetic, leaving off a very problematic individual with the worst version of Batman, with stellar lines of dialogue in Batman and Robin like, I want a car. Chicks dig the car. This is why Superman works alone.
Yeah, he was just given, like, I felt bad for George Clooney. I thought he got a lot of bad rap because he had the worst material during the making of Batman and Robin, and he had to basically force himself to publicly apologize so many times. And I felt bad for him because he was such a great actor that just gave him a lot of crappy material.
He was and still is, and a lot of that movie was not his fault. He was clearly trying, but I guess, I don't know, it just felt like what are we doing here? But I think that's a good place to leave it off. I think we've covered just about everything, Matt, unless I'm forgetting something. And
there's a couple that I forgot to even mention that I love the third act finale about them fighting the Kryptonians and seeing Barry and younger Barry like teaming up, really working together. And I thought that the stakes got higher and the tensions got higher, especially with Michael Keaton dying twice in the movie. And that was so crazy. I mean, it just shows you that these characters from that reality with Sasha Calle's Supergirl and Michael Keaton's Batman were meant to die. Like, no matter how many times you try to alter it, it's still going to try to correct itself, and it will keep flowing in the same direction. So there's no point of trying to changing it. And I thought, and especially in the scene where you saw Barry holding in Batman's arms saying like, I can't bring you back. And then Batman was like, you already did. And that just got me so hard and emotional, in my opinion, the performances. And seeing Batman just take on a big, gigantic Kryptonian dude, I can't remember his name, just putting a bunch of bomb explosives on him, as many as possible to blow him up. And then he got just tossed around and he got really messed up. That pretty much kills him, which that's what happens when you try to go head to head to a Kryptonian. You're going to be done for. And then there's another scene when Barry tries to reset the timeline, when he goes into the grocery store and takes the tomatoes out of the cart, tries to undo what he did. The scene when he was talking to his mom, tries to get a little bit more closure and an emotional support, and just them talking, and it just felt, oh my God, I just felt so bad for Barry even more and more, and just saying that he has to undo it now. He's literally killing his mom now by taking the tomatoes out of the cart and going through the course as it was originally intended. And I know some people had a problem with Barry now trying to change something again when he just takes the tomatoes on top a little bit further just so that his dad can face the camera and that looks up, because in the original timeline he couldn't look up. He was wearing a cap. No, they didn't see his face, and it was not enough to exonerate him. So he didn't. It probably in the moment, it probably would not have changed anything if you did a little small thing at the time. Probably from his point of view, he thought that the letting his mom die would undo everything. I mean, I don't know. I'm just trying to justify that scene because I know some people did not like it.
Yeah, I know. Jacob from 3D Movie Cinema. He and I were talking about it, and he does have a problem with that. I personally didn't really give it too much mind. I actually, that's another one of the highlights to me, where like that whole scene where Barry realizes like this is who he is, and he has to own that now. I thought it was just handled incredibly well, and so I feel like, again, much better movie. It would have been like handled much better, but again, that's, we got what we got. But yeah, I think, unless you wanted to talk about something else, I wanted to bring up like DC's future. I think that would be interesting to talk about.
And I did hear recently that when they did had a sequel written before this whole change, but I know that the sequel's not going to get made now. But in the sequel, we find out that Barry's mom's killer was Eobard Thawne's Reverse Flash, and they were setting up for the Reverse Flash in the second film, a movie that we're probably not going to see anytime soon. But I thought that would have been interesting because I mean, we always wondered like who killed Barry's mom in the film. I mean, we already know that in comics and in the show that it was the Reverse Flash that killed his mom, and that's what set him on the path to becoming the speedster.
Yeah, that, like I said, that's probably never going to happen, even though that does sound quite interesting. I would have liked to have seen that. But the world will never know, just like the Batgirl movie that was entirely made and we're probably never going to see, which just sucks, but there you go. One more note before we close things out. I wanted to just kind of bring up like the next set of movies that we're going to get, because DC's got 2 more movies coming out this year. Blue Beetle and Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom. And then next year we got Joker Folie à Deux. I hope I'm saying that right.
We're just going to call it Joker 2. I mean, the subtitle, like, we're not going to pronounce it right.
Sounds very foofy to me.
Foofy.
Then in 2025, we got Superman Legacy, which you already brought up. And then the Batman Part 2 from Matt Reeves, which as of this live recording, they are both in development. And honestly, after the Batman, Matt Reeves, you take all the time you need, because that movie was awesome.
Oh, but yeah.
That's a story. That's a story for another time.
Don't rush art, and he can do whatever he wants to do for that version of that universe, because it's completely outside of the DCU's continuity.
Also, if we're remastering Nirvana songs for the trailer, I wholeheartedly recommend The Man Who Sold the World in Heart-Shaped Box. Like, just find a way. Editor, do it.
Let's hope it fits. Let's hope it fits so well into the tone of the movie, because the one that Something in the Way song from the first one, that fit perfectly in that movie.
It did. Well, as for this year, we got Blue Beetle, we got Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom. I'm going to be completely honest. I could care less about Blue Beetle. It's not winning me over personally. I know who Blue Beetle is. I watched the Batman Brave and the Bold TV show on the Cartoon Network, so I know who Blue Beetle is. This is not ignorance on my part.
Have you seen Young Justice? Did you know he's in? Yeah, I that was like my first exposure to Blue Beetle was in the final season of Smallville, when the Booster Gold guest starred on the show, and you see the origin story, a little bit of the subplot of the kid becoming Blue Beetle, and it didn't look good at all. But then I saw Blue Beetle developed in Young Justice, which I love that version of Blue Beetle, and I know you don't care. I mean, that's a fair point, because the movie itself just doesn't. The trailers just was not getting us enough excited, but I'm still looking forward to it because I love the cast and I love the actor who's playing it, because I loved him in Cobra Kai, and I love how passionate he is by making this movie. And even if it doesn't do well, it don't matter, because James Gunn confirmed that the first introduction of the character is Blue Beetle, but not the movie. So the movie itself is not going to be canon to the DCU's project. His character will be the first introduction of the DC universe. And I'm not going to expect much of the box office with Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom, especially now with the whole baggage, again, with the DCU baggage that's been coming along this year, especially with the film Shazam! Fury of the Gods. That movie completely completely went down the rails financially earlier this
Mm.
year. Nobody had bothered to go out and see it, even for someone who actually liked the movie, not as good as the first one. But unfortunately, no one went out to go see it. I mean, I don't know if it's because of the whole that they're kind of done with this whole DCU and they're just waiting, just like move forward and start fresh. At least that's what I think. And I just don't think
Yeah.
The Lost Kingdom is going to make crack $1 billion just like the first movie did, especially in the time like this right now. I just don't think that's going to happen.
Not to mention, speaking of problematic individuals, we got someone named Amber Heard still as Mara, and I'm not going to bring up the Johnny Depp Amber Heard situation. Honestly,
I don't
that
think
has
anybody
been
wants. I don't think anybody wants to bring that up.
that dead horse has been beaten so much it's got Nike printed in it. But yeah, talk about a movie that's going to be real interesting to talk about come December 20th. But you know, I don't think this looks particularly stellar, but it just feels like closing things out, and then we get an Elseworld movie with Joker 2, and then James Gunn's like, let me show you how it's done with Superman Legacy, because I'm very optimistic for that. I think Superman has been shunted and cast aside for far too long, and I feel like it's high time that we finally like he is the centerpiece. So James Gunn like immediately is like the first movie I'm doing is Superman. Like let's not beat around the bush anymore.
I totally agree. I mean, you know how much he really loves these DC characters. He will bring in a bunch of familiar faces that we know, like the OG Justice League characters in the DCU, and then he'll bring in something unfamiliar faces. And we all know how much he can do well with these unknown comic book characters, like the Guardians of the Galaxy and like the Suicide Squad and Peacemaker. We know how much he is passionate comic book fan, and he will definitely do the best he can to tell stories because he is always more of a storyteller than a director. He even brought that up in the Michael Rosenbaum's podcast that he is a great collaborator. He will ask as many questions of what can work in this movie while he's directing it, these movies. And I really appreciate what he's trying to tell us. Like I said this before, that he will try to be very cautious of what they're going to put out for the brand and not overextend themselves.
Yeah, it seems like James Gunn's gonna take things and bring it to very much a by the numbers, like very conservative approach, which I think at this point is the best thing that can happen at this moment in time. But I think that's a good place to bring the things to an end, unless Matt, you want to talk about a couple of other things before
I mean,
we.
all I'm gonna say is that when you see James Gunn, don't bet against him because if you love his movies, like Guardians of the Galaxy, the trilogy, especially the third one came out, like people forget that the film came out recently, not that long ago, and a lot of
Yeah,
people loved it, including myself. I thought it was a banger movie, and it was way
yeah,
more darker and emotional. And we know how well he can balance tone with humor and dark and drama. We know how well he can do it. He doesn't try to be like Taika Waititi in Thor: Love and Thunder and makes it undercuts a lot of the drama with some of the jokes that are just thrown in your face. No, he's all about good balance that serves the story, and he knows how to deliver it. And I trust him. And whoever he casts as Superman, I'm going to trust him completely. I'm pretty sure that they'll go for someone completely unknown, kind of like they did in the past with these other actors that played Superman before.
yeah. Yeah, Thor: Love and Thunder, aka the death of Taika Waititi's Golden Touch. But again, that's a whole nother story for a whole nother time. But I pass it off to all of you. What were your thoughts on the Flash? Favorite moment? What are you looking forward to next from DC? Let us know in the live chat or in the replay in the comments section later. I'd love to hear what you have to say. Matt, it's always a privilege to talk about these things with you, like movies, comic book stuff in general. I've been looking forward to this ever since I got out of the theater. I was like, I got to get Matt on here. It's like it's a must. But but like I said, his link tree's in the description. But I almost called you Jacob. I feel like I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Matt.
A different person.
Do you have anything exciting coming to the channel?
Well, not at the moment, but I'm probably gonna be planning on seeing The Flash again maybe this weekend, and hopefully I can get a chance to go see Elemental. I still want to see it. I know a lot of people are saying good things, even though unfortunately it's losing a lot of money. Which, oh, come on, dude! Like, are people really gonna give up on Pixar at this point when it became a banger before this? I mean, I don't know. I mean, I don't know how you felt about. I don't know if you've seen Elemental. Have you seen that movie yet?
Yes, I have. I think at this point I'm going to make it part of my cinema catch-up video for quarter 2 of 2023. But yeah, that movie's not doing well, and I liked it. I gave it a good rating, but yeah, it's like Pixar's in a weird slump. Like I don't know what's going on over there. It is like the last few movies I've been like, all right, these are fine, but they're definitely not like golden age.
Yeah, they're not going golden age like they used to. I think people like there's some like Pixar movies recently like Lightyear and Luca. Some of them are just doing fine, but it's just like people are just not want to go out in the theater to go see it. They want to wait for it to go to streaming, and I think that probably affected that whole day-to-day streaming with Soul coming out exclusively on Disney Plus, and then Luca, and then oh man, it felt like it went on a path after another, and it just took a lot of effect, and it kind of ruined the reputation of Pixar movies. I really hope that they can get their acts together with their quality. And from what you said that it's a good movie, I'm definitely going to go out and give it a chance because I'm interested in seeing this movie.
It's definitely not like 1995 to 2005 Pixar, their golden years, but I didn't hate it. I thought it was a nice story. So, yeah, I'll look forward to hear what you have to say about it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I hope to bring you on at some point again in the future. You're always more than welcome here on the channel. I love bringing you on, but yeah, Matt's links, description, subscribe, go ahead. As for the rest of the week on the channel, I'll be continuing my road to Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny by reviewing Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade with Jacob Martin, my podcast partner. Spoiler alert, it's my favorite movie of the series. Like
Same.
it's
I'm
better.
totally with you on it. The Last Crusade is my favorite of the series. Yeah, Raiders is a masterpiece. It's an all-time classic. I could see why people would pick that over Last Crusade, but The Last Crusade is a lot more watchable and more fun, especially with the banter between Sean Connery and Indy. The father and son was just a more emotional and more relatable, and it was satisfying. Like I kind of prefer that The Last Crusade was pretty much the end of Indy's film of his journey. But who knows? Once we see the Dial of Destiny, we might change our minds.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to / dreading it because it's like Kingdom of the Crystal Skull left a lot of people cold, and I do plan on rewatching it for the project, so that review will be coming out next Thursday. Last Crusade will be coming out tomorrow, so stay tuned to the channel for that. This coming Friday, I will be concluding my road to Asteroid City by covering Wes Anderson's most recent film, The French Dispatch, which was certainly interesting to go and rewatch. I hadn't seen it since I saw it in theaters. It was very interesting to say the least, but that Wes Anderson project has been far more interesting than I was really prepared for, because love Wes Anderson's like older films, but it's like his like from like Bottle Rocket up to like say The Life Aquatic with Steve Zissou is like is he overrated? Like, am I gonna be the one guy who's like Wes Anderson's overrated? And he's not. Like Fantastic Mr. Fox, Moonrise Kingdom, Isle of Dogs, those movies are great. And it's just his early stuff I'm just not a fan of. But French Dispatch was actually pretty good, and my thoughts on that will be on Friday. Yeah. And then Life in the Movies next Wednesday will be the July 2023 preview. We will be live for that, so it'll be so much fun. But I want to say thank you all for tuning in live. If you're watching on the replay, thank you for watching the replay. For Matt Wyatt, my name is Ryan Cam. We will see you in the next one. I hope you all have a good night.